So, hello everyone. Welcome this evening to Money Spaces with Kalu Aja. That's my name, Kalu Aja. Appreciate you all being here from across the world to have a conversation about money, personal finance, investing, and of course, the economy. That's all we do here every Saturday. We want to essentially talk about how we can translate complex financial topics to what we can understand, use, and make ourselves better. So thank you everyone for joining in. This week, usually I host and I ask questions and I do take, I run the show per se. But this week, a friend of mine, Toby, wants to interview me about my book. If you guys don't know, I wrote a book. The title is the title of today's space. Let's talk about your money. And I think it's a great book, right? So it's really all my experience so far, about 22 years in investing, private banking, asset management, all that kind of stuff. Essentially, that's what I put together in that book. I try to just encapsulate my work in the US, in Nigeria, put it all together and just make it in a very, very easy, simple way for us to understand and to follow. So the book is on sale. It's on Amazon. It's also on Roving Heights if you are in Nigeria and all. So I would appreciate if you did get it and also give it as a gift, right? Super. Toby, welcome. Obianuju, welcome.
Hi, Carlo.
Hi, how are you doing?
Great, I can hear Obianuju.
Yeah, excellent.
Hi, Toby.
And let me just introduce Obi. So Obianuju is quote unquote our Twitter manager. So she runs the Twitter space in the back end, right? So she makes sure we get our questions in, curates all those DMs that are coming when we're speaking. I might forget. So we do appreciate that. If you want to speak or ask a question, you can send her a DM or request and she will see it, right? I mean, in case I might get carried away just talking and answering Toby. So that's Obianuju right there. Toby is the gentleman, like I said, a friend of mine that's doing the interviews. So I'm just going to hand it over to Toby and I'm going to be a guest on my own show. Toby, be nice to me. Thank you.
Carlo, you're a good friend, huh? You're giving us a lot of work to do with a wonderful book. You don't need to bother me. I'll be very nice, but hey, Carlo, just take it easy. Hi, folks. Thank you for joining in. I've been reading Carlo's book for the past 1 month, and he's been gracious to answer a few questions. Tell us what's the thinking behind what he has written. And Carlo, I'm going to start up on a very personal and light mode before we get too technical. But I want to, drop something here. If at any point I get, carried away, please pull me back. And Obianuju will be posting some pictures that I'll be referring to and pin it to the space so we can, get a feel of what I'm talking about when I refer to any figure. So, Carlo, you said, let's go on.
Yeah, shoot.
Awesome. You mentioned in the space in an interview and even in the acknowledgement in this book that you switched from microbiology to banking and finance, and you even thanked the dean for letting you do the switch. Can you just tell us what really happened? I'm not sure if you mentioned this before, but we know that you switched from microbiology, you dropped the lab coat in the lab to go count money. Carlo, why? What happened?
Yeah, that's a long time ago. So I had written JAMB. I had been accepted to study microbiology at the University of Nigeria. That's in Nsukka, and that was it. So I was to go to university in January of that year, but that Christmas, right? I watched Wall Street. I wrote about it in the book. I watched Wall Street, and that was where I caught the money bug, the investing. It wasn't even investing. It was just what the guy, Gordon Gekko, was doing on screen. The confidence, the ability, the intelligence. I just wanted to understand what he was doing. And I felt, because back then, remember, there was no internet back then. There was no mobile phone. There was no, I'm going to Google what Wall Street means. There was nothing like that. And there was no Wall Street on TV. TV was NTA. That's it. So the only way I could understand what Gordon Gekko was doing was to go to school and study finance. That was the whole plan. So back then you had to have, you do your WIAC, then you can do either your science major or you're an arts major. But I was actually an science major, and banking and finance was art. So I asked the guy, could I change? If I want to go study banking, can I change? And the guy said, yes, if the dean will take you, have to go to the dean and show him your WAEC result and your JAMB result and see if he'll take you. And if you don't know, Nsukka is 2 campuses. In the other campus is all the professional courses, law, banking, all that, medicine is all in one campus. The other campus is the engineering and all that. So I drove all the way to Enugu and I met the guy, the dean, and I said, sir, I'd like to join banking and this is my WAEC, this is my JAM. And the guy looked at it and said, sure. That was what he said. He said, sure. He said, go and register. And I went, he gave me a form, I registered, and I joined the class of banking and finance. That was it. And it was just to learn, right? And that was how my journey started. I started to know about money, international banking, all that kind of stuff. And I never went back to microfinance. My parents didn't even, I was like, they're going to kill me, but they didn't really mind. Well, okay, that's what you want to do. That's it. And yeah, that's the story.
You made this sound so easy. Like, I met the guy, and then that was it. You recall, guys, I mean, if you listen to this interview last week, Carlo mentioned about watching Wall Street and then going to meet a lady to buy shares at a nominal value, and then he got to realize that it's not what it was. But then that was a spark for you.
Yeah.
Now you're telling us the same story, but this time around with a dean of the faculty to switch. Which one came first? Was it the lady at the bank with the first bank revelation of what power value, or was it the dean? Which came first?
No, it was watching the movie Wall Street, then going to try to buy shares in Lagos in the first bank office, and realizing I knew absolutely nothing, because I was looking at shares are always sold par value and then the market price. So it was sold par value of 50 kobo, but it was sold as 3 naira 25 kobo, I believe. That was what it was. So I went in there, I wanted to buy the shares for like 325 to go sell to my friends back in Ikeja or something like that. And the lady says, no, that's not how it works, So you have to so she sort of tried to explain to me. And I realized this was much more complicated than the movie showed, right? So that's when I said, if I go to university, I'm going to try to change to banking and finance. That was just my plan. But the dean made it happen. He could have said, no, you didn't write the JAMB. You didn't put banking and finance on your JAM. So he basically wrote and said, yeah, if he wants to change, he's got a good JAM score, he has a good WAEC score. Yeah, he wrote a paper for me and I went and I registered. That was it. So I didn't write finance in JAM. I was a science guy and that was it.
I mean, I'm just, thinking about myself writing JAM more than once. Could I have just taken the first course and then tried to switch it instead of writing JAM over and over again? But that's a very nice story. I don't know if that is applicable in this day and age with all the whole complexities, but that's a good start to the interview. That's just to get you comfortable, Carlo. We're about to get into something really, really deep now. And if you listen to the first interview, I took it chapter by chapter and I stopped at chapter 5. I'll try to speed it up a little bit, but I would not rush. There's some salient part of this book that got me thinking, and I've had to, interface with friends of mine, even ask Carlo on Clubhouse as well, but I'm going to bring it back here. Let's talk about retirement. You made mention of that in chapter 6, target investment plans. And what caught my attention was the retirement plan. You gave a very nice detail of how to compute when to retire, your work-life expectancy, your retirement life expectancy, how to build up that fund you will need. And you make it so simple that one would wondering, if it is this simple, then why didn't we start early? Why do we have all this mess up with the pension funding scheme? Why do we have to, suffer so much emotionally and also physically with the hands of these guys if we can actually do this ourselves? And again, we're looking at the African system, the culture, where one would supposedly depend on a kid.
Yeah.
Because they've invested so much on the child. I expect my child to take care of me when I retire. Someone will argue with you, Carlo, man, what are you talking about here? This is alien to our culture. My child will take care of me. I don't have to go through all this formula and details you're spelling out here.
Yeah.
Speak to that person that's telling you, Carlo, I don't agree with this book. My child, I have invested in this person that's going to take care of me.
Yeah,
What do you say to that argument?
Yeah, to be honest, a great question. And like this whole book, right? Something goes through my head, then I write the chapter, right? But I have to write the chapter professionally. I don't really write what is happening whilst that chapter was important to get into the book. So remember, this book is just 249 pages. Half of the book couldn't get into the book. Half of what I wrote couldn't get into the book, right? Because I couldn't say some stuff, or it was just too much, or it was too complex. But this one, I tried to make sure it got in. And we call it retirement is what we call a target investment plan. Why is it target? Because retirement is you know exactly when you are going to retire. You can calculate down to the kobo exactly how much you want to have when you retire and how much you should save. You can literally calculate all that, right? So why retirement? Why is it important? Because it's the only, you can't change it, right? You're going to get older every day. So once you miss out on investing for your retirement, you can't fix it. You can't go back and invest more to retire. It will cost you a lot more, because the whole idea for retirement is this: you're going to buy income today. That's what you're doing with the retirement scheme. You go today and you are buying income. Look at it that way. You are buying income today to be paid to you in the future. So when you have your retirement savings account, those contributions you are paying to your PFA, you are giving them the money today. You are buying a product from them today. When you retire, they will give you back that money you've given to them with interest. The way the formula works, it works with time, not really the interest rate, time. That's why you hear the formula is called the time value of money. If you don't take advantage of time, then you have to invest more and more. So the point is, if Tobe and I are the same age, and I invest when I am 20 years old, and Tobe invests when he's 30 years old, if the same interest rate we're earning, right? If Tobe pays double, but he started to invest 10 years after me, same interest rate, I will have more money than Tobe in 30 years. I put the formula in the book, Brother A and Brother B. It's maths. It's not magic. The earlier you start to compound, the more money you make. So that's the explainer on retirement. But why should an African with 7 kids, that our culture says that when you get older, the kids you have trained will then take care of you? Why should you worry about an RSA? It's the same reason why you go to Mr. Biggs and you eat in restaurants, but in the past, your father used to eat at home. The world is changing. African culture is changing. We're now part of the quote unquote global economic or global village, right? So everything is going to change. Very soon, you're going to see old people's homes open up in Nigeria. You're going to see all these folks that are abroad that have now been are old and no longer, and their kids are all married and all. They're going to start to come back home to Nigeria because they want to be in Nigeria, irrespective of whatever is happening. They want to stay here and live out the rest of their lives. They're going to see old people's homes start to open up because the culture, the demographics is going to change. This is why you have to pay attention to your pension scheme. Your pension scheme is more important than even your investment scheme. It's very, very important. When you start early and you compound investment, then you have a better pension scheme. So I think that sort of summarizes your question in a bit.
This explanation should really, get into the mainstream because not a lot of people understand it the way you describe it. I'll give you one example. I have a senior colleague. Okay, I don't want to, reveal anything here, but I have senior colleagues who earn a lot of money, and then they tell me, I just bumped into a discussion where we were discussing how much they're going to levy their children when they retire. I'm talking about people who earn a lot of money, either from their salary, business, or from projects. These guys are really at the peak of their career, but then they see that as an entitlement that I'm going to levy my child a lot of money to be paid to me once I turn 65. I heard that, it wasn't told me. I was in that discussion. Now, this is someone who is highly enlightened and educated. So it's not about having a degree or being educated. It's about a change in perception, a change in awareness. How best do we get this out? Because this explanation, honestly, is not out there. It's not in the mainstream. And I think spaces like this will really help push it. So guys, if you know anyone who has this perception, please invite them in, listen to the recording. But Kalu, I'll just have you to say this one more time, that last part about African culture. Just say it a bit more slowly for guys who didn't follow and for those at the back.
Let me give you a different way of what I'm saying, a different way. I live in Nigeria. Right. I live in Nigeria in this GRA, highbrow, and if you drive in, you see massive houses, 5-bedroom, 6-bedroom, 7-bedroom mansions. And I lived there when I was like a kid in university, right? And all my friends that live there, most have gone abroad, most are working. What is happening right now in that estate is either the homes are being sold or the homes are being leased out as mini flats, or the folks are living there alone. No, it's very rare to find a guy that will come back home and live with his parents in, say, Nigeria today, right? It's not an exception. It's not that you don't find one or two guys living there, but once those guys come back, they don't want to live with their parents. They have their own families, right? So all these homes that we build in America, a guy works in, say, Wall Street. He's from, say, Ohio. He goes to Wall Street, he buys a flat, he grows his family, blah, blah, blah. When he retires, he moves to Florida. He leaves Wall Street, he moves to New York, he moves to Florida, where cost of living is cheaper, right? And his pension can go a lot further. In Nigeria, we're not that mobile. You come from Abia State, you get a job in First Bank, so you move to Lagos State. You go in Lagos State, you buy a home, you grow your family and all that. When your kids grow old, you have a house, you have friends in Lagos. You really don't move to the village when you are still, say, 60, 70. You still stay in Lagos because that's where your friends are, that's where your community is. You only consider going to the village when you are really old. And this is the thing where that pension doesn't really take you that far. This is another way of looking at how we have to change the culture to fit where we are working, right? Because in the past, work was going to the farm. Now work is going to another state to work. Really, when you leave or when you retire from work, you should leave Lagos, sell your house, and go back to your village in Abia. But your village in Abia has no internet. It has no medical services. So you have to stay in Lagos to get access to those high quality services. And that's the problem that we're facing. It's the same thing of trying to match the African ideology to the reality of the Western economic construct. Your pension going forward is going to be your number one source of income after you work, not your kids. What if your kids decide not to give you any money? What would you do? So you've got to build a pension scheme, not just the ones you're doing in an RSA. You can go to any good financial advisor. They will tell you down to the Naira and Kobo how much you should save. You compare that savings with what you have in your RSA today. The gap, you have to make an extra contribution. You can do that in dollars and invest in a dollar-backed security that gives you diversification. But you can't invest all your money in one currency in one country, right? So go to your financial advisor and say, hey, I earn 1 million. The rule of thumb is 50% is going to be your expenses after you retire. Okay, you ask your advisor, if I'm going to spend 500,000 every year for the rest of my life, how much do I need to invest today to make 500,000 income for the rest of my life? He will tell you need to put X amount of money. Then you look at that X amount of money, you compare with your RSA. Am I saving enough? If you are not saving enough, then you open up your own personal retirement or investment account to save extra. Americans have a Roth. They have IRAs. Nigerians don't have IRAs. So you have to go create one. Go to an insurance company, go to a bank, go to a stockbroker, do it yourself, but don't just rely on one currency, one country, or even children for your retirement. You got to do that yourself, guys.
So children are off the plate.
They can be there, but don't depend on your children. Yeah.
But don't depend on them. So that's the message. Plan your retirement yourself, because the children also have their own life to cater for. They have their own debt to pay. They have their own kids to handle. Thank you very much, Carlo. So that points to financial independence. You have to start building it right now. And Obi.
Check on the next question.
So do we take question now, or we?
I think you.
I have to.
Obi,
question for Kalu. So Kalu, you talked about people saving up. You hear me?
Yes.
Hello, to me. Can you guys hear me?
Kalu, can you hear me? I can hear you.
Yes.
Wow. I'm trying to make out what you say, but it's a bit symmetrics.
Okay, great. Okay. So I'm going to ask Kalu a question, and the question is: can you decide how to invest your pension? So can you have a conversation with your PFA to say, I'm still young, I have a lot of time on my hands, I'm earning well, significantly well now. Can I choose the high risk fund to invest in, which of course will give me a higher yield? Can I make that kind of choice with my PFA? Because a lot of people don't actually, first of all, they don't calculate they don't actually track their pension. Not just only tracking their pension, they don't at the end of the day actually see how well their pension, their PFA is doing, how their pension is growing, tracking it over the last 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and see how significant, what's in my PFA. I will give an example. So I had a case whereby a PFA, I'm not going to mention the PFA, did not remit a number of months to my pension scheme, but to my account, and somehow I just logged in and then discovered it, and by the time that money that was spending, according to them, it was sitting and hanging in their system. So my company did actually pay this money, but the PFA did not remit it into my account. By the time they credited my account, it was almost running into $1 million. So that was like $1 million, almost $1 million hanging somewhere in the thin air, until I discovered that my pension was not bad. I tracked it and discovered that some months were missing and were not remitted into my account. So how would you advise? Would you advise that people should ask their PFAs how they want their funds to be invested, and then also track it? And then, Carlo, the second question is, someone is asking that for individuals who are self-employed, that's how do they create an RSA and then, of course, save your pension for tomorrow? So how would you advise them to do that? Another question is, I don't know if you'll be able to respond to this, but someone is asking that, can someone use crypto as an RSA? I would say no to that, but let me leave it to you to respond. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so quick questions, Obi. So first one is, can you tell your PFA what to invest for you? Yes and no. The PFAs have got 4 funds, right? Fund 1, Fund 2, Fund 3, and I believe retirement fund. So Fund 1 is is overweight more in equities, which means it can take
to invest. That's what I actually wanted to ask. Which fund?
Yes, if you want to take more risk,
exactly, yes,
then you want to do maybe Fund 1. It has more equities in it. So if you are younger, you want capital appreciation, then you want to do Fund 1, which means you are also increasing your risk. But the point I'm making is this, right? When you want to sit with an advisor first and understand how much you should save, then you then tell the advisor, I'm already saving this amount of money in my retirement savings account. Then you have to then go do a separate investment to do what's called a catch-up, to ensure that your final payout is going to be in line with your expected expenses when you have stopped working. Remember, guys, retirement is not a number. You don't retire at 65 or 60 or 12. You retire, and I'm going to say this slowly, you retire when your passive income is things that you don't have to go to work for: rent, dividends, share of a business, you retire when your passive income can pay your necessary expenses. Once that occurs, you can retire, which means that if you own homes and those homes give you a revenue that can pay your expenses and you are 40 years old, then you can retire. If you earn 2 million naira, but your expenses are 1.8 million naira, you can't retire. It has nothing to do with your income. It has nothing to do with your investments. I'm saying it slowly. It has to do with the passive income generated from your investments. So when you are working, you want to transfer your money from active income over to passive income. So you take your salary, which is active, and you buy shares or you buy a property, which gives you passive income. Then when the income from the passive side can pay off your expenses, and the term there is your necessary or non-discretionary expenses, that's when you can retire. So to answer Obianu's question directly, yes, talk to your PFA and make sure you are choosing the correct fund in line with your risk profile. The second question is, can you do a self-pension? Yes, there's a company in Nigeria called Awaba. If you can Google it, Obian, if you can Google and post it up, Awaba, it's run by Tunji. They do micro pensions. We're also going to speak to PFAs very, very soon on this spaces about micro pensions. So I recommend Awaba. If you guys can find them, or you can post it up. They do micro pensions. Make sure you are saving. It's not a pension scheme, right? It's a long-term tax-deferred savings scheme. You don't pay taxes if you put the money in your pension account, and it grows compounded. You don't have to tell them to compound it. They will compound it for you automatically. So you should have an RSA. And when you have an RSA, do more. Get your own in other investment accounts and do it. If you're in America and you're listening to me, the first thing you want to do is your Roth. No, the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure you match your company's pension plan. Most companies will give you, if you invest 5%, will match you 5%. So the first thing you want to do is to make sure you are matching the company plan. Ensure you are matching to the fullest version. That's in America. The next thing you want to do is to open up a Roth IRA. A Roth IRA means you pay taxes today, but you can withdraw that your principal anytime tomorrow without paying taxes. It's so good that the US government will restrict how much you can put in your Roth. So the first thing is to match your company 401k. The next thing is to do your Roth. Then the next thing is going to do your normal pension savings extra into your 401k. That's for Nigeria. That's for America. For the gentleman that asks about crypto in your RSA, I would say no, simply because your pension is your quote unquote your bottom box. What if anything happens, you run to. So crypto assets are just too volatile for a retirement scheme. I would buy them for my trading account. I buy crypto, I buy, I sell, I buy and sell. But I'm not going to leave it alone in my RSA. Folks might disagree, but I would say be very careful about buying a moving asset that changes and is very volatile into your long-term plan. What if you're going to retire in 2022 and crypto assets are now down almost 42% for the year? Then what do you do? So we're going to get back to Toby, and then Toby can take the floor. Thanks, Toby.
Hey, sorry, actually I was on mute. So thank you very much, Obi, for those questions. They are really spot on. For the guy on crypto, man, I'm with Carlo. Crypto is a hot plate right now. You don't want to get burnt. And just to reiterate what Carlo mentioned, because that was actually where I was going to next, the financial independence. So in another way, independence when your passive income exceeds your non-discretionary expenses. And Carlo put up a very nice chart on figure 6.3. Obi is going to put up that chart in a few minutes. And it's really nice the way you kind of explains this. on the chart. So with a point where your passive income, either from dividends or from money you get from your business, and you don't have to put in the energy to get that money, the moment it hits non-discretionary expenses like rent, payment of utilities, food on the table, then you have hit financial independence. And according to what Carlos says, at that point you can retire. This is really getting, and there's a part I want to, turn this, before we kind of calm it down a little bit. Carlo, there's a part, towards the end of this chapter, you have a chart on 6.5. I'm going to let Obi put up that chart along with a 6.4. How to get 10% salary increase. Because the whole point is to build up wealth, invest, get those passive returns, and also build up your portfolio. But then, he gave an idea here, how to get 10% increase. I'm sure you have the book. Guys, if you have the book as well, go to page 74. I'm going to let Carlo describe this. Is this a joke or, you're really serious about this? It sounds so simplistic on paper.
Yeah, but
just, take us through.
Yeah, it's just a play on the law. The law says that your employer has got to pay 10%. I think the actual calculation is 10% of your basic housing, and I think it's transportation. But eventually, when you open up a retirement savings account, your employer has got to contribute 10%. I believe you contribute 8%. If your employer wants, he can contribute the whole 18%, but he has to contribute at the minimum 10%. This is not your salary. This is an extra, right? So if your employer pays you, he has to also pay a pension contribution. So when I read this, I always get worried when people say, I am not going to do RSA. I don't want to do retirement savings account. If you don't have an RSA, you are missing out on 10% salary increase into your retirement savings account that you can take when you retire. Your employer can no longer touch it. The account is opened in your name, is secured by your biometrics. Your employer can never touch it. So why would you not do an RSA? So many employers would cover with the employer and be like, we don't want retirement account. We're not getting paid enough. No, the law says they have to pay. They have to pay 10%. You pay 8%. That's a salary increase right there. They're not going to give you the cash. They're going to put the cash in your retirement savings account. So you want to do it. That's what you want to do exactly. And the law then says if your employer does not remit, there are consequences and you can report your employer. So why would you leave 10% on the table? That's the question. It's right there. The law says you should take it. So go get it.
Awesome. But, Carlos, still on this, someone else might want to punch this analysis and say, that 10% the employer is paying is actually part of my money. I worked for it. So the employer did some deduction in the overall payment due to me and took out that 10%, and I matched the 8% from my own, money. So that 10% is not really coming from the company. It's actually what I worked for. So would you still say that is still 10% free? Because I worked for it, technically.
No, the law says that.
The company is giving me free.
So let's look at it this way, right? You earn a salary. Before the Pension Reform Act was passed, you are earning a salary. The government then says the employer has got to do a schedule. It will calculate your salary. It will calculate your housing. It will calculate your transportation. Then it does the 10% on those three elements. It's not going to reduce your salary and pay you 10%. Nobody here will stand for that. That to pay 10%, your salary goes down so they can pay you the 10%, which is the only way what you're saying would occur. So the law says, when you have that schedule, that pay schedule, then you add 10%. It becomes a cost to the company. The company can write off that deduction on their P&L, but that money is paid into your retirement account based on the schedule that the company has to give the PFA. So it's not, if they do that, that can only happen if you have agreed. So would you agree in your company that your salary will go down by 10% so that you can pay a pension contribution? Which employees would agree to that? They wouldn't. So that's what it's an addition. It's a cost to the company, but the company can write it off their P&L, and the money, the only beneficiary in this is you. It goes into your account, opened in your own personal name, not in the name of the company, in your own personal name. So it's right there. So go get it.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Carlo, for that explanation. Just to a quick refresh, we're already 5 minutes into the discussion. I'm interviewing Carlo about his new book. Let's talk about your money. If you don't have this book at this time, what are you waiting for, guys? Go get the book and follow the discussion. Carlo is telling us the thinking behind what he has written in the book. And this is the second part. The first part was done 2 weeks ago. You can find it on his website. And so far, we've touched on retirement plan, getting a 10% increase. It has been really deep stuff that Carlo is dishing out right now. I want to pipe this down a little low, let's talk about love and money, Carlo. In an African culture, the guy picks the bill on a date. And I know we talked about this briefly, but on this book, Carlo, you said, I'm going to, read an excerpt today from the when dating. I suggest you consider dating on a budget. Talk about money early in the relationship. You do not necessarily have to ask the how much do you earn question. Carlo, dating on a budget. Hey folks, you can send in your DM, you can send in your questions or your arguments to Obianuju. Let's talk about this, And this last part, the red line, do not ever go into a sizable debt because you are dating someone. I'm dating a lady, and then you're talking about we dating on a budget in an African culture. I don't know if this is just me alone, but Carlo, talk about this. What we see you're trying to pass in this chapter about love and money?
Yeah, this was a fun chapter to write. So I wrote it's about love, right? How you should date, how you should date and talk about money, about two couples. But it's also about how a startup company, a company that is looking for a suitor. So you're a startup company, you're looking for a company to quote unquote marry you. So also, how should you also talk about money, and how should you also relate to money if you're a startup? So look at it as a personal guy, or look at it also as a startup looking for a suitor. And the lessons there are very, very clear. There's a stat I saw once that said 90% of marriages fail because of money. And it's not money that, you don't have money. No, it's the effects of money or not having money. You are in the home, it's dry season, you don't have air conditioning. Or you are in the home, the guy is the CEO, you never see him because it's always in Abuja chasing one deal. So money really is the root of all divorces, one way or the other. So if you know this, right, try to marry someone that is money compatible. Money compatible. How do you know if somebody is compatible? The same way, if you're a company, you're looking for a suitor. Maybe you're an ethical company. You don't do alcohol. Would you then go to, say, Guinness and ask for equity investment or seed investment? You wouldn't, because you say this company sells alcohol, but I'm ethical, so I won't buy alcohol. I won't have that investor. The same thing if you are dating. You don't have to ask the person, how much do you make? But you want to find out what do you think about money? I mean, if you do, are you saving? You want to ask smart questions, right? Do you think credit scores are helpful? Just jokingly ask, man, my credit score is down, or what's yours? Or what do you think about it? Do you think it's a fair thing? You hear and you get a lot about how people think about money. And if you know how he thinks or she thinks about money, it does help you know if you are compatible. I mean, you want to go out. I had a friend that was dating a quote unquote billionaire's daughter, right? And it was like, this week we will date, next week you will date. So you take me to where you want to go this week, and I'll take you to where I want to go this week. And when he takes her out, she can't eat there because, oh my God, there's no caviar here, But in her spot, her friends are there and they're all having fun. So you want to ask yourself, if you get married, are you really compatible? If you say, let's invest, will she really invest with you? These are the questions you want to basically find out. It's not about love, it's really about money. And we talk about dating, we talk about when you are going steady, we also talk about even when you are having the wedding. We say if you have a wedding, do your wedding according to your budget, not according to how much you raise. If you say we're going to spend $1 million on a budget, spend $1 million. If Dangote comes, oh, I heard you were getting married, here is a check for $5 million. Please don't go and rent a bigger hall. Take that $5 million and invest and still spend your budget. Even as a couple, who does the bills? There's a difference between who is paying the bills and who is earning the money. Many times, who earns the money pays. Sometimes the person that earns does not pay, somebody else pays. Assign these rules, know who has the rule for what. There is nothing like when and I'm going to use this term, it's not PC. If a housewife sits at home earning no income, she is actually employed. She is working at home. She is working and earning. So you can't say she's not bringing anything in. Like I said, try to pay what she's doing. Try to pay for it. Try to pay for childcare. Try to pay for a partner. Try to pay for a stylist. Try to pay for a house cleaner. So all this stuff, you have to be aware about the money relations in the family so that it saves you issues going forward. If you're not compatible with money, it's difficult to be compatible with love. I want to be proved wrong. It's just my opinion. There's no law about this, so it's up in the air, guys. Toby, back to you.
See, I know that there are some people that will be itching to ask questions or counter what you said, but Carlo, as fun as this sounds, this is really deep stuff because one of my siblings told me that you never can know the destiny of your life until you get married, because you bring another partner into the relationship, and then it might direct your life pattern to a direction you've never planned out. So dating is really key, and I love the way you brought up the finance part. And each time I talk about this, I look at the African culture because, you're predominantly Africans here, and we tend to have a different mindset. But it's nice that we have to, educate ourselves on shifting this mindset to what really should work for us, not just what, the culture or what our parents told us, and, it should be the norm. But so thank you very much, Carlo, for breaking this down. I will move on, to the next set of questions because you mentioned if someone gifts them, say Dangote gives them $5 million, don't go rent a bigger hall, invest. Now let's talk about investing, and it will be a little bit more detailed and deep stuff later on. But let's start from the basic. I'm referring to the 8 point of that chart now, where you talked about types of investors and what type are you. We know from books, from commentaries, there are active investors or aggressive investors in quotes, and there are passive investors. But on this chart, Carlo, you talked about naive investor. For me, that's a little bit strange and new. And you had a very nice way of describing that. I don't know if you probably can put up that chart. The knowledge, the time, and the interest, the investment cost, and then the risk. And you broke this down to passive investors, naive investors, and active investors. I want to believe that the passive and the active or the aggressive are really clear. Speak to naive investor.
Yeah.
Who is a typical naive investor, and how can you spot one?
Yeah. So, great question, Toby. So you have three elements here. Knowledge. Do you know about investing? Can you differentiate what a bond is from what equity or stocks are? What's the difference between a bond and a share? What's the difference? That's knowledge. What about time? Do you have the time to go on your phone, look up the price of Tesla, look up the PE of Tesla? Do you have that time, even if you know? Then, of course, do you have an interest? Is it just, let me save money so I can retire? I don't care about all this stuff. I just want to save and invest. So clearly, if you're passive or active, it's a mix of if you're knowledgeable, if you have the time, or if you have the interest. It's just going to be a mix of all that, right? But when we talk about a naive investor, and this is sadly where a lot of people are, sadly, and I'm just trying to be a bit realistic here, a naive investor has no knowledge about the topic. So you hear NFT, and you hear NFTs are making money, but you don't know what NFT is. So you have no knowledge. You also have no time to actually Google what an NFT is. It's okay, I don't really have the time. I'm going to Chambers, or I'm going to my hospital, or I'm going to the bank. I don't have time. And maybe you don't have interest. You just have the interest to make money. You're really not interested in how. But if NFTs are making money, well, let's go into it. That's being naive, right? Because you should never invest in what you don't know. And that's once you do that, that's when you get into trouble. Like Forex trading. Someone says, pay me and I will teach you how to make $1 million in Forex. The question is, why can't the guy just make the $1 million himself? Or binary options. Do binary options and then you won't lose money. Same question. Why can't they do it themselves and not lose money? Or invest in me, I will pay you 10% a month, guaranteed. The question is, why can't they just go to Zenith Bank, borrow 1 billion, invest in themselves, and make 10% a month and become richer than Warren Buffett? Why do they always need your money to make more money? So you can tell ab initio, these are all nonsense, right? Really, that when people, you don't have to have a finance degree to read through a Ponzi scheme. You don't. But people try to it's a very simple way to see if an investment is fake. But people want the complicated. Oh, what? It's very, very simple. And I say it all the time. Just you drill it down. Are they registered? Right? If they're not registered, then don't go past point A. Just stop there. If they're registered, okay, what else? What are they offering you? Remember, they're a business, they have capital. Why can't they just simply invest their capital, their own capital, in what they are asking you to do, and then make all that profit? Guys, nobody is going to help you. There is no help in investing. People are going to invest in you or through you. Anytime a transaction happens, a sale has been made. It's either you are buying or you are being sold. So, Toby, back to you.
Thank you very much, Carlo, for that elaborate explanation. It was worth more than what I asked. But I still want to take you back to the same question. I'm looking at page 84, and you gave there are key questions you asked here to determine where one should fall in. What are you investing? What is your goal? If you lose 25% of the investment value today, will you sell, hold, or buy? That is to ascertain the person's risk tolerance. So, Carl, I'm putting this question back to you now. What is your risk level? If you lose 25% of your value today, will you sell, hold, or buy? And this is not a recommendation. This is just academic, just for us to learn. How do you navigate this path of risk tolerance to determine your risk appetite?
Yeah, I mean, so you've got to have your objective down, tied, and settled. My objective right now is to build passive income for the long term. So I'm looking for opportunities out there. I can buy a good company that can pay me dividends. People say dividends are for old people. I like dividends now, right? That's what I want to do. So I buy EFTs, exchange traded funds. They're like mutual funds, but they can trade during the day and they are cheaper. I try to focus on EFTs and stocks that pay a high dividend. I don't care about the market price. I look at the market price the day I want to buy. The market is going up, the market is going down, it's immaterial to me. I know what I'm buying. If the market is going down, I'm actually excited. I then transfer cash and I buy more. The market is going up, I'm just looking because I can't buy anything. But that's me. That's me. I also have a trading portfolio. On that trading portfolio, I'm buying news. I'm buying the news, right? They say Tesla is going to do this. I buy Tesla, I sell Tesla. Just on the news, on the event. Oh, this stock, people are selling this stock, but it's going to go up in price. I do that. But my long-term portfolio is based on me generating a sizable passive income. That's my objective with that portfolio. These are the stocks that I'm buying. It doesn't matter to me if the price is up or down. Are they paying me a dividend? No, the price of Procter and Gamble can go up and down, but people will still brush their teeth. People will still take a bath, right? Right now they're saying oil is everyone's going green, but we can look at what's happening to the oil price. Joe Biden is traveling to Saudi Arabia to ask OPEC to increase supply. So oil doesn't look like it's going anywhere soon, right? What about food? I mean, we have to eat. So I'm buying those necessary sectors. Homes, I buy a lot of property EFTs that pay me rent. People are going to pay rent. There are no homes in America anymore. Rates are going up. So people are going to buy rent and all that. I want to get a share of that. So I buy a company called ARR. That's like Apollo Residential ETFT, and ARI. That's for the commercial side. Those guys pay almost 8, 9, 10% dividend yield. So why do I care about the price of Microsoft or whatever? I like Tesla, but Tesla does not pay a dividend. So I only trade it. I'm not going to buy it and hold. But that's me. This is not recommendations, but you have to have your objective. Once you have the objective, then what you do follows the objective. You can't invest without the objective. It's like driving a car that has the roof down in the rain because you want to go from point A to point B. But that car can take you there, right? So if your objective is just to get from point A to point B, then you don't care about being wet. So your objective is very, very important before you even start to invest today. I'll hand it back to you.
That's a very smart way to answer that question, Carlos. So know your objective first, then you can determine what to invest in. At this point, I want to invite Obiano Jew. I can sense a lot of people already have questions. You can just take 10 minutes before we hit the hour mark. Now, Obiano Jew, do you have any questions on your end from DMs or anybody who wants to throw in something? Obiano Jew.
Hi, Toby. Okay, none coming in yet. Just refreshed. None coming yet. Yes.
I have a lot of my DMs, so I will try to read them when we're done today.
You want to share them with me?
I will send it to you. Yes. I'll send it to you.
All right. So so while Carlo is pushing the question to Obiano, just want to do a very quick refresh. So this is a part 2 of my interview with Carlo on his new book. Let's talk about your money. And we talked about retirement plan, why it's important, why we have to change the narrative of the African culture depending on your kids. You need to build up this yourself. And the aim is to reach a retirement point, not by age, but by your portfolio. When you get to the point where you have enough passive income to cater for your non-discretionary expenses, then you have attained your retirement. You can actually retire and let the kids plan for their own life. That's one key takeaway. And we brushed through love and money. Very nice and smart way, Carlo, comparing love and money to a company. I'm sure some people kind of take a different, view to that, but, we're all learning. Now, since we started, investing, I want to move a little bit deeper to equities, okay? And that's in chapter 10. I kind of moved a bit further to chapter 10. But before I get in deeper, I don't know if the transaction of question has already occurred between Carlo and Obiano.
Go ahead, Toby, because I'm yeah, go ahead.
All right then. So we talked about investing, okay? How to know how to invest and know your risk appetite. Now, when people invest in equities, they meet a lot of jargons. There's about to know the dividend yield, the intrinsic value, all those jargons. Carl, I'm going to pick one of them because people ask the question, where should I buy? And I heard you talk about this a number of times. Don't just cost average. But the people who have been following other commentaries, listen to Warren Buffett, who kind of tell you, buy below the intrinsic value. Carlo, I'm referring to a chart on figure 10.4, intrinsic value. I want you to break this down to the layman's, understanding, because that's the starting point. I want to buy into this company. At what price should I go in? I don't want to time the market, but I want to understand is this company overvalued, or is this the right time for me to buy? Card 4, intrinsic value, price per earning. Carlo, take us towards this part gently, because there's some people at the back that want to really understand this and a bit louder. Carlo, what's you?
Yeah, so I get you, Toby. So let me give the analogy first, then we'll talk about the numbers. So imagine you went to the market in December to buy rice. The price of rice would have gone up. The price of rice would have gone up. But the value of rice doesn't change. The value is the same as it was in January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November. But the price has gone up in December. Why did the price go up? Because, of course, demand, Christmas, all that kind of stuff. Same with the stock market. If today Elon Musk announces that Tesla has just signed an agreement to build a factory in India, the price of Tesla will go up by, say, 50%. Why? Because Tesla is going to sell in India, so the revenues will go up. If the revenues go up, then the price, the value, the fundamentals of Tesla are better. The fundamentals, look at it this way, the fundamentals are what we call the intrinsic value, sales, revenues, cost per sales, all that kind of stuff. Those are the fundamentals, and that's what we call the intrinsic value. The price is just what people want to pay for to get that intrinsic value. So in December in that marketplace, you are prepared to pay 30,000 naira to buy carbohydrate, which is rice. But in February, you are only going to pay 20,000 naira to buy the same carbohydrates, which is the same rice. The carbohydrates in the rice do not increase or decrease. That's the value. What increases and decreases is the demand, which affects the market price. Same with the Tesla. Because Tesla is going to go to India in our example as we used, then there will be more demand for Tesla, then the market price of Tesla will go up. The fundamentals of Tesla has not changed yet because Tesla has not started production yet. But the market looks into the future and says because Tesla will be in India, we will price that in to the fundamentals. Then we'll discount that price to today, and that will make Tesla's price at $800 cheaper. That's why you see Tesla stock today and the market capitalization of Tesla higher than Mercedes, Honda, Toyota, BMW, Ford, and GM combined. So all these other car companies, if you put them together, Toyota, Volkswagen, BMW, Jaguar, all of them, if you combine them together, Tesla by market capitalization is higher than them. But by sales, Tesla is not near them. This is the disconnect between value and price. Value goes with fundamentals. Price tends to go with demand. If everybody wants to buy Bitcoin, the price of Bitcoin will go up from 1 cent to $69,000. What's the intrinsic value of Bitcoin? 0. But the demand has moved the price from 1 cent to $69,000. The same with gold. What's the intrinsic value of gold? 0. But if everyone wants to buy gold, the price will go from 1 cent to about 2,000 per troy ounce. That's price, not value. But P&G makes toothpaste. People buy toothpaste. So the more the population brushes their teeth and buys toothpaste, the sales of Colgate will keep on going up. As the sales of Colgate keep on going up, the profits of P&G keep on going up. As profits of P&G keep on going up, dividends paid, all things being equal, will keep on going up. That's the fundamental. The intrinsic value is determining what is the real value of that company or that stock. then you compare it to the price. If the intrinsic value is lower than the price, you buy, because eventually the market will catch up and move the intrinsic value up. But if the intrinsic value is higher than the market price, then you sell, because eventually the market will determine that this company is fake and sell their shares. So you look at AMC, GameStop, and all that. Those companies were technically dead. That's why they were shorted. Shorting means the company is selling their stocks to make a profit, right? But the GameStop the boys in Wall Street Bet says, no, we're going to buy those dead companies and revive them. So they spoiled the law of trading in that transaction. So I don't want to get too technical with intrinsic value. It's simply, look at that as simply the value, the fundamentals of that company as compared to the market price, which is driven by demand of that same company or commodity. Toby, back to you.
You know, as complex as this sounds, Carlo, I mean, you're an excellent teacher. You kind of like grilled it to, piece bits for us to understand. But you know what? Carlo did an excellent job in describing, what he just talked about now in the book. So you want to get the book and refer to this over and over again if you really want to, capture the true essence of what he just described now. Guys, we are top of the hour. This is exactly 1 hour we started this talk, and we've not really even gone anywhere. Probably we'll have a part 3 today because there's still a lot to talk about. And that's the beauty of, interacting with the author about the content, the thinking behind what he has written. And Carlo has been doing justice to this. I'm sure the seat is not so hot because, Carlo, you've been cruising all through these questions without, busting the lead. But that's because you know your stuff. So, and thank you very much. So now that, you've determined the intrinsic value, you know the worth for the company, you know what you want to invest in. The next question, which you talked about in page 119, starting from page 119, is how to invest. And you describe 3 methods, 3 broad methods. Of course, the calculation, the analysis, and this is beyond the scope of this book, but I want you to touch on this briefly. So you have the investing using the dividend yield method, the risk-free rate, and understanding earnings. And I want you to tie this up with a brief explanation on the price to earn, the PE. This component of a stock comes up often. Would you want to, just take us through what you're trying to explain without getting too technical? But, just at the very I love what you describe on the dividend yield method. It's so simple. You can just start from there and then, take us gradually without too much of technicalities.
Sure, we can do that. So just a big caveat, right? Any method you see out there will not work consistently because everybody knows it. So just like how you're driving in Lagos and you know that if there's traffic going from Yaba, if there's traffic on Third Mainland Bridge, you can go via Yaba and enter VI from Yaba side, and there's a place you can go to climb that bridge. But if everybody in Lagos knows that road, then the next time you use that road, it's blocked because everybody knows about it. So the same thing with any market information you see. As long as you see it in a book or in a magazine or online, then everyone knows about it. So the space to make profit from it consistently becomes reduced. But it's good learning for you to understand how stocks works. And as Toby said, let's look at dividend yield. It's a very, very planned way for you to buy a good stock at a good price. It's very, very simple. Before you invest, you ask yourself, what's the risk-free rate in the economy? In Nigeria, the risk-free rate is going to be the rate that the federal government is paying you to borrow from you. So if it's borrowing for 91 days, that's called a treasury bill rate. You write that down. If it's going to be a bond, that's going to be more than 1 year. You write that rate down. Let's assume the government is borrowing from you at 10%. That's your risk-free rate. That's your rate that you should not go below because you can give your money to the government and earn 10%. So why should you give your money to anybody else and earn less? Now you then ask yourself, all the companies that you see on the stock market, you write them down. You write all those companies down, right? All the companies you see, Nestle, or ABC Transport, or write everything down. Now you want to then get maybe 40 to make it easier for yourself. You can eliminate some. You can say, okay, if this company is not trading with a good volume, I'm going to eliminate some. Do that elimination. Then you ask yourself, rank those shares, right, according to their dividend yield. So rank all the shares according to their dividend yield. Dividend yield means how much is the company paying you. Rank according to dividend yield. When you have your dividend yield, you only take your top 10. Now you compare your top 10 dividend yield paying companies with that risk-free rate of the government. If the stocks are not paying you higher than what the government is paying you, don't buy stocks. Why? Because you can just buy the government bond. End of story. But if the company stocks are paying you more, not the price, not the dividend yield. If it's paying you higher, then you can buy. Because for that year, you get a higher return than the risk-free rate. So it's very simple to do, right? It just shows you how you should think about dividends and yield in your calculation going forward. You can't use this formula as your every time dividend yield. It's just for you to learn. That's the point we're making with this, right? Let's talk about price to earnings ratio. As the word says, it's price to earnings. When you see a PE, that number is telling you how many times of its earnings you are buying. I explain. A PE of 10 means if you buy that company at the price the company is priced today, you are paying 10 naira for 1 naira of earnings. So when you see Tesla stock at PE of say 50, it means at the price of Tesla, you are paying $50 to get $1 of Tesla's earnings. That's what the PE means to you. So the question is that, but Carlos, doesn't make any sense. Why would I pay 50 to buy 1? Same question. Let me give you an analogy. If you saw Messi when Messi was 10 years old, before he played for Barcelona, how much would you buy him for? Would you buy him for the price of, say, $10,000? Remember, I didn't know Messi was going to be this big star. But they said, we have a Brazilian guy, his name is called Messi, we think he's good, but would you pay $10,000 for Messi? You might be like, I'm not sure if he's going to make it. So reduce the price for me, and you might not have bought him. 10 years later, you said, wow, Messi is playing for Barcelona B team. Okay, I'll pay $100,000 for him. But remember, Messi has no earnings. So because Messi has no earnings, his PE, or he has very, very little earnings, will be very, very high because he has no earnings. So you are paying for a Messi that is unproven, that has no earnings, with high price. That's what Tesla is. Tesla's PE is 95 right now, $95 right now. The price is 703. This means if you buy one stock of Tesla at $703, you are going to pay $95 to get $1 of earnings. The only reason why you would pay this is because you believe in future Tesla will even grow sales more, which means this 703 would rise to say 1,500, which means your earnings would then make sense. So PE is a quick and dirty way for you to see if that company is growing fast, and how much of the earnings is the market willing to pay for. Because if the market believes that Messi will do very well in future, then Messi's PE ratio will be very, very high. Because when he's in the Barcelona B team, they will say, no. When this guy enters Barcelona A team, it's going to blow up. It's going to win medals for Barcelona. So we're going to pay for him now because in the future, he's going to blow up. But you can also go and buy a player like Etim Essien that also had a very, very high PE ratio after the Olympics. But he didn't play for any good club after the Olympics. A Nigerian guy, right? So he went in, high PE, didn't play for any good club, got stuck, eventually got banned, moved to Nigeria, right? So the PE then the earnings now didn't meet up with the price. Hence, that company goes down the drain. You can't compare PE across sector. So you can't compare a bank's PE with an IT's PE. You have to compare sector to sector to show you if that stock is expensive. What I mean expensive? How much earnings are you paying for at that price? If you are paying for more earnings with your little dollars, it's expensive. That's the whole idea. But if the PE is 4, that means you are paying just for $4 to get one earnings. That's okay. That's about reasonable. But if it's 100, you are paying $100 to buy $1 of earnings. So you have no margin there. So also Google price earnings growth, which is perfect. But this is the way we can talk about PE without getting too complex to be. Last point, 2 companies with the same price. The one with the higher PE is the most expensive. The market price is immaterial. The market price is just what you pay to the broker. The real price is what you are going to get. So the PE tells you what you are paying for. That's how you know if it is cheap or expensive. Nestle at 1,400 might be cheaper than ABC Transport at 35 kobo. That's the point I'm making.
So the PE is like betting on that this company is going to improve and grow. Is that a better way of putting, like in simple terms?
The PE is what the market has already bet on that company. So when the PE says, when the market says the PE of Tesla is 95, the market looks into the future, not today. So the market is telling you that we believe that Tesla is a high growth company and that we are willing to lose money today by paying 95 for one, because in future the earnings of Tesla will be so high that our 95 we have paid for one will now become paying 95 for 200. Does that make sense?
Excellent. I love the way you use real life examples with companies that we can connect with. Thank you, Carl, so much for doing justice to those questions. At this point, I want to shift base to Obianuju if she has any questions from her DM that she wants to ask at this point. Obianuju, any questions from your end?
Hi, yes. So we have a question, and I think 2 questions. Someone is asking, I invest in Ghana Treasury Bill. Market and get back to Naira. Another consistent increase in NPR. Do you think Treasury bill rate?
Obianuju, I think you're cutting off. Is it just from my end? Or
I think
clearly?
She cut up, but I think I understand both questions. She's asking, number one, can you invest cross-border in Ghana? She's asking that question because Ghana has high inflation and very, very high yielding bonds. So Ghanaian bonds are paying, is it 25% I saw last time? They are paying very, very high, right? So she's asking, can I do that, do an arbitrage, take money from Nigeria, buy cedis, buy Ghanaian bonds in cedis, get paid in cedis, and then change it back to Naira and bring it back to Nigeria? So that's her first question. The second question is asking if the MPR, what we call the Fed's fund rate, if the Fed's rate goes up, will it affect maybe treasury bills and bonds? We'll answer both of them. The first one, I'll make it easy for you.
There's another one, Carly, before, so that you take everything once. So the recent downward trend in GTB performance, would you still consider them a top buy?
That person wants to put me in trouble. Okay, so let's do MPR, Ghana, and GT Bank. Okay, so MPR, let's do the first one, which is should you take money from a low interest environment, right, and then go to a high interest environment to be able to take advantage of what we call arbitrage. That's the word, arbitrage. That's what many folks are doing right now. in terms of the Naira Euro bonds and the US Fed rate. Before the US increased rates, I posted this on Twitter and I thought people would jump all over it. It was possible for you to go to America. If you owned a home in America, for instance, and you could take a HELOC, which is called a home equity line of credit. If you could take a home equity line of credit from your home in the US, say $500,000, you would pay the US bank 2%, 3%, maybe 4%. Let's say 4%, right? You will bring that 500,000 naira to Nigeria and you will buy the 30-year federal government Euro bond that was paying you 8.75% in dollars. So you're going to make 4% every year for the next 35 years. So you could retire to the beach, drink your pina colada, and you would earn 4% in dollars. Remember, US inflation rate is about 2% on average. So you are covered. This is the point of moving from the US, low currency, low inflation, to Nigeria, high currency, high inflation, and making what's called an arbitrage. It's called a carry trade. That's what's called a carry trade. But why can you do it to US to Nigeria? Because you can buy an FX forward. You can, in Nigeria, buy your dollars to leave Nigeria ahead of time. I don't want to get complicated, but it is possible for you if you are investing in 5 years in Nigeria. So you want your money back in 2027. You can literally buy dollars today to be given to you in 2027, and they will give you a quote. That means you can do your calculation, borrow from the US bank, buy your Euro bonds, and know exactly the dollar rate you would get in 2027. If that rate is lower, you don't bother. You just buy market rate. If it's higher, you call in your contract. Clean, easy, legal, 4%. Why can't you do this in Ghana? I'm not sure if Ghana has forward rates, which means if you take your Naira and you buy Cedis bond and you get paid your Cedis bond, the question is, at what exchange rate can you come back in? Can you lock it up to come back at a rate that would make sense for you? I think you can, but if you don't have a way to lock it in, you are exposing yourself to that additional exchange risk. This is the way I'll answer it. If they have a forward rate that I can go in and cross my dollar and buy, yes. So the way I would do it is this. I would go from Naira to US dollar, then US dollar to cedis, then cedis back to US dollar. So I'm doing dollar to cedis. So you want to find out if there's a forward market in Ghana for dollars that I can lock my dollar in so I can come out. If there is, good play. That's what I would say to that, right? MPR, it means that this is the rate at which the central banks across the world sell money or issue loans to the banks. I'm just being very simplistic. So every federal central bank in the world would issue or borrow money from the banks at a rate. That rate is called the Fed rate, or in Nigeria's case, the MPR. That's also how central banks set up the exchange rates in the economy. So right now, you see the US is moving up rates. If the US moves rates up, let me say it slowly. If you are already in bonds and the US rates are going up, you are going to lose money if you are already in bonds. If you are buying bonds, then you will make money. If you are already in bonds and the US Fed increases the rates, then your bonds you already own will lose value, but the bonds you want to buy would gain value. So the way to play fixed income in a period of rising rates is to buy only short-term investments. So you buy only treasury bills, or you buy 6 months bonds, highest 1 year. You don't buy long-dated bonds. If you look at the bond returns across the whole world, the best-selling bonds right now are treasury protected securities, short-term treasury protected securities. What's the next one? Short-term securities. Nobody's buying long-term bonds because the Fed is going to increase rates. And if the Fed increases rates, if you are already in bonds, then you will lose money. If you are trying to buy bonds, then you make money on the new bonds being issued. Hey guys, I think I was knocked off. I think I'm back now. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you're back, Carlo.
Okay, so I just did. Yeah, Twitter kicked me off the space. I just got back in. The last question is about GT Bank. The guy is asking about GT Bank. Let me answer it this way, right? Again, go back to your objectives. Go back to your objectives. Why are you in GT Bank? GT Bank to me pays a fairly good dividend, right? They pay a very good dividend. The stock, i.e. the bank in Nigeria, is well known, good brand. They've got good spread everywhere. I'll give you a few numbers just to let's look at their PE ratio and all that kind of stuff. I mean, what I'm trying to say is that is there anything wrong with the bank per se? Is GT Bank going to fail tomorrow? Does GT Bank's brand, is it going to fail tomorrow, right? If the answer is no, then you want to ask yourself, okay, if you are already in, why do you want to get out? If you want to get in, then look for a good price to get in. That's just how I'll say it. Their PE ratio is 5.68. 5.68. So if you buy one naira, if you buy GT Bank, you are paying 5 naira 68 kobo for 1 naira of earnings. Their earnings per share is 6. But look at where I like GTB. Their dividend yield is 13.30. So if you buy GTB, you are getting a dividend yield of 13. Does it beat inflation of 16? No, but it's high at 13. So if I bought this, I was getting 13 a year. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I would stick there. So the point for me is long term. Do you think anything bad will happen to the brand? Do you think the brand will still be in business? If you think the brand will still be in business, then I would say, no, what's the plan? What's the rush? Hang in there. I mean, it's not advice, but if I own GT Bank, why would I sell? Obi, I don't know if I answered that question. If not, you can come back.
Sure. Obi, I don't know if you have more questions.
Did you hear me?
Yeah, go for it.
Did you hear me? No, that's all. That's all.
All right. So thank you very much, Carlo, for doing justice to that. I don't know if you want to add anything else, Carlo, from your DM, any question, or if anybody wants to, speak, because I'm just trying to wind down now. This has been a lot and very technical, but there's one final chapter I want to talk, touch on before we call it a wrap for today, for this session. Carlo, any question from your DM you want to?
When I read the DMs, I break because I'm reading someone saying this or saying that, so it's hard for me to read DMs if I'm talking at the same time. So I try to leave it till the very end. Yeah, we can just keep on going. We can add speakers and they can speak and we can ask, but I'll leave that to Obi. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, so Obi, up to you. If anyone wants to jump on and speak, you can admit them. But I just want to put one final chapter before I let Carlo go, because you talked about if the dividend of what they're offering, the yield is higher than the inflation, that it's a good deal. And now take chapter 14 to investing in inflation period. That's actually what we're facing right now, all over the world, not just in Nigeria, not just in Africa, yeah, all over the world. And about a lot, and I love the examples you used. In chapter 14 on table 14.4 to speak about inflation and earning, what it does to earning and disposable income. Just break it down to piecemeals. We're referring to chapter 14 of this book.
What page is that? So I can just go right to it. So
175.
All right,
175. And when you're looking for that, I love the quotes you added at the beginning. It says the stock market is designed to transfer from the active into the patient. Carlo, using that as a guide, speak to inflation and how we should invest during inflation period, which is actually what we're facing right now.
Yeah. So when I wrote the book, I set to write this draft about 3 years ago. There was inflation back then. It was very, very bad. And even before then, there's always been inflation in Nigeria. So I wanted to not just write on inflation, but also write on investing during inflation, because it's the same lesson. It's just what options are available then, but it's the same lessons as well. So Warren Buffett has that quote: the stock market is designed to transfer money from the active to the patient. There is this concept. If you watch movies, you think that Wall Street and hedge fund managers, that all they do is shout on this screen, buy, sell, buy. They're doing deals, flying private jets. That's the impression you get. Their day is actually very, very boring. These guys have already bought what they want to buy from, say, day one. All they do is just sit and wait. They don't do anything else. Why do anything else? They bought, then they hedge. That's what they're called, hedge funds. So they buy GT Bank, which is buying a Nigerian risk asset. Then they buy a Nigerian government bond as a hedge against their risk. They just wait. Because if the bonds do well, they are covered. If the bonds don't do well, they are covered. Any which way, they make money. Hence the term hedge fund, right? So they don't do a lot. And the same thing with Warren Buffett. All he does is sit down, finds a good company. Okay, he wants to buy HP. HP is on his list, but he won't buy it today. He will wait for people to panic, sell their HP, then he will buy it. That's what he does. So he waits. He wants to buy oil and gas, but oil and gas prices are high, so he can't buy. Then he waits for a Democratic president to come in who would attack oil and gas and say they want to do only green companies. So people will sell their oil and gas companies. ExxonMobil will lose a shareroom battle. Shell would lose a battle that will make them sell more than 45% of their assets. When the sentiment is down, when everyone thinks oil and gas is down, then Warren Buffett goes and spends $10 billion and buys Occidental Petroleum, because he knows oil is not going anywhere. Ships need oil. Trailers need oil. Trains need oil. Right now, we've seen that if you take up a big commodity trader like Russia, the whole world suffers. So because he knows this, he's bought oil. The same thing, that's his quote right there. The stock market is designed to transfer wealth from the active to the patient. If you are buying and selling, you tend to pay fees, number one, but you are out of position. If you guys can remember, I believe it was last year. Can you guys remember when crude oil went to $0 a barrel? That they were begging folks to buy? It was called, backwardation or so. If you can remember, crude oil was literally zero. Because to store the crude oil was more expensive than to sell the crude oil. So the traders were trying to get the oil off their hands so they don't pay for storage. But now, the only asset class in the world making money is crude oil. But crude is an artificial market. 5 years ago, crude oil was zero. So if you try to time the market, you will lose money. But if you pick a sector, pick a strategy, and sit there, you make money. So let's ask ourselves, Toby, what is inflation? Inflation is the depreciation in your currency. It's very hard to explain inflation or what causes it. People always say inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. That's not really the full explanation. When Trump was the president, the US had very low inflation and very low unemployment. According to economics, that should never happen. You can never have low unemployment and low inflation. But it was happening because the guys that wrote the economics textbooks did not think of gig workers like Uber that would employ you even if you are retired. And those keep the wage costs lower. So inflation is hard to define. But what it does is that it makes your currency lose value. So if your currency is losing value, how can you then avoid inflation? You go out of currencies. It's pretty simple. You don't stay in a currency. You go out of a currency. And just to give you numbers, if you are earning 500,000 naira a month and the inflation rate in Nigeria is 15%, Your real salary is 434,000 naira. That's your real salary. Your employer has to pay you 575,000 just to keep up with 15% inflation. So anyone listening to my voice from Nigeria has your wages. The civil servant guys have not seen a wage increase. They've been on 30. They haven't seen anything. But how many private sector folks have gotten a wage increase? How many? Not a lot. But your employer has got to pay you 575 if you are earning 500 grand just because of inflation. That's it. So the way to get out of inflation is to get out of currencies and try to be in an asset class that the price rises with inflation. And I give you a few examples here. You can buy short-term, high-yield municipal bonds. So the local governments are borrowing in America for short-term, so you are riding that short-term wave. There are other companies that have short-term inflation-protected securities. Remember that I said this is the best performing fixed income asset class right now. Also buying dividends. What's a dividend? You are buying into Procter & Gamble, and when they sell toothpaste, you get a share of that dividend. But remember, if the prices go up, we have to still buy toothpaste and mouthwash. You can't say because of inflation, you won't brush your teeth. So the companies that do well in inflation are the companies that sell necessities. You will buy Gala and La Casera. You will buy Indomie. If the price goes up, you will just buy less, but you will buy it. If you are going to cook soup, you will still buy Maggi cubes, right? You may not cook soup twice a week. You might cook soup once a week, but you'll still buy Maggi cube. But there are many things you wouldn't buy if the price went up. If DSTV takes that price too up, you'll be like, man, I'm going to just watch NTA. You will miss out. You go and watch your Chelsea winning the cup in a viewing league, but you won't pay for DSTV. So when you are buying stocks, you are buying stock of a company whose price can rise with the rise in inflation, and folks will still buy. That's the way you beat inflation. You leave cash, which is paper, which is fixed, and you try to buy so that the price can appreciate or can rise as this money supply increases. That's the way you beat it. The tactics are going to be different, but that's the overall strategy, Toby. I'll send it back to you.
So the summary is this: during inflation, put your money to fast-moving consumer goods, companies that people cannot do without. They must purchase those things. Probably they just have to get less of them.
Yes.
FMCG, Carl, right?
Yes, and I'll give you a scary stat I saw. I think it was 2 weeks ago. If you simply held dollar, just dollar, paper, dollar in your pocket, you wouldn't have made any profit. Let's be clear, you wouldn't have made any profit, but you will not have lost money. Bitcoin, stocks, bonds have all lost money this year. So just you holding paper, that is paper, you will not have lost money, because the world right now is in a high inflationary period. When there is trouble in the world, what happens? Everybody runs to a dollar, which is what is happening right now. If you buy a bag of rice today and you put it in your store and you eat that bag of rice over the year, technically you are making 16% return. Because if you didn't buy the bag of rice, you would have been paying 16% inflation. Look at it that way. So if you buy things in bulk, you are guaranteeing yourself that return, because you're not paying the inflation adjusted price anymore. So if you buy rice, you buy your tomatoes in January and you're going to eat it all through the year, you are really avoiding food inflation, which is even higher, right, than even the 15, 16%. Food inflation is anywhere from 18 to 22%. So buying in bulk means that you are removing that cost being added to your budget, and it's a guaranteed return on your investment. So inflation is targeting your money supply, and the way you get out of that is by avoiding any asset that has a fixed return. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's long-term and fixed, you don't want to do it.
So two clear additions to what you mentioned earlier, Carl. Hold cash that have value, currencies and currencies that have value, and two, stock up on the things you would not do without. So stock up food items and hold dollar. And I want to pivot this to what is happening right now, the dollar. Do you envisage a point when the dollar will get weakened? Looking at what Saudi Arabia, China, and notably Russia are trying to do, trying to boycott the use of the dollar. Do you envisage a point whereby the dollar will not be as strong as it is right now?
Yes, but just to be clear, the dollar is already weak. The dollar is already weak. The value has fallen precipitously from 1970s. It's as deflated as the naira. Just to be clear on that. So don't assume the dollar is a strong currency. No, if you want a very strong currency, there's the Swiss, there's the Australian. All those currencies are strong, but the dollar is very weak. The problem is, or the advantage of the dollar is this: is the global reserve currency. Which means if a guy in Singapore that has a very, very good currency, right? Or a guy in Switzerland wants to buy crude oil from Saudi Arabia, he wouldn't pay Saudi Arabia in reals, nor would he pay them with Swiss francs. He would pay them in dollars, which means he would take his Swiss francs, change to dollar, and then give the dollars to the Saudis. Then the Saudis would then give him crude oil, which means that even if the US is printing quote unquote toilet paper, the world must buy that toilet paper, including you and I. I just give you the example. If you hold that paper in your pocket, you are not losing value simply because the world has to buy US bonds. There's always a discussion in Nigeria when they say, like, I want a strong currency. There is no nation I know of on earth that wants a strong currency. I haven't seen it. Maybe I'm wrong. Because if you are exporting, you want a weaker currency so you can then, of course, pay your local bills. The US is a net importer, but they get away with it because they have a currency. They import a television and print dollars and give to China and Japan for the televisions. That's what's going on. So the question is that, do you think the US dollar will get weaker? Yes, because unfortunately, let's not talk about who is right or who is wrong. When Russia invaded Ukraine, they had 600 billion in central bank asset reserves. Whenever you hear sanctions, no G8 nation has ever been sanctioned, right? And even when they are sanctioned to the point of seizing central bank assets. So right now, Russia wants to pay bonds. The US says you can't pay bonds. The US says you can't use the deposits in banks to pay bonds. If not the deposits in central that it has been frozen. If the US has a Wells Fargo account, for instance, they can't pay bonds with that. The US has embargoed that. So many countries are saying, even if they are friends with the US, so tomorrow US can actually freeze our account. So why don't we have a mix or basket of currencies with the francs, with the yuan, with the Australian dollar? Just have a basket. So if the US freezes this, at least we can pay our bills. It doesn't mean they hate the US. It simply means it's due diligence and risk. Should we say you are hedging your risks. So this will tell 25, 30 years down the line. I saw a story that says the Saudis are thinking about allowing the Chinese to pay for crude oil in yuan. So if that happens, then it's lights out for the dollar. Once the dollar or the Saudis start to sell crude oil in any currency apart from the dollar, then it's all over. That's why you see Joe Biden, even though he has called the Saudi ruler names, is going to fly to Saudi Arabia, have his picture taken with them, essentially to say, all right, guys, we're friends now. Because without that relationship of the dollar and Saudi oil, then there is no relationship. Yeah, we're taking speakers here, Stinaj. You can hop right in anytime. You know that. Thanks, Tony.
All right, thank thank you very much, Carlo. Does anyone want to, jump on any question or?
I don't see speakers that request, so I'm sorry, guys. If you request, I don't see. Yeah.
I cannot see from my end. Obi, does anyone want to speak? Can you see anyone?
I see the DM asking to speak.
A couple of people had been added as speakers, but they probably dropped off. But okay, while we are waiting for more speakers to join, some questions came in, and I'll just go through the questions. So, to you, Kalu. So the question is, what advice would you give to people who are investing in Nigerian stock markets from a high taxing economy like Germany?
I mean, the first question is to ask yourself if you're going to pay taxes if you invest in Nigeria. I know if you buy foreign stocks, the Americans have a way of taxing it under the IRS. So the first question is you want to ask yourself, how will Nigerian investments show up on your tax return? That's the first question. Just be clear on that. I'm not a tax expert. The second question is that you want to compare the yield. Again, you have to do that dollar thing. You have to go from euro, right? From euro to dollar. And then you want to compare that dollar yield with the Nigerian euro bond yield. If the euro bond yield is higher, you buy euro bonds. You don't buy anything, you just buy the euro bonds. But if the euro bond yield is lower, then you consider other options. So you're going to do euro, dollar, maybe a Nigerian stock like, say, GTB. You compare the yield on GTB to the yield you would get if you put that same money in a German stock index or a German bond index. What's the yield you would get? If you think yield in Nigeria is going to be higher and you buy, then how can you hedge? That's part one. Part two is how can you hedge the currency risk? Nigeria, like I said, has the forward market. So if you Google FMDQ, you can buy your 1 year or 2 year dollar. So I would say if you're going to invest in Naira in Nigeria from Germany, I would take my euros, buy dollar, inflow it officially through a Nigerian institution to buy that stock, right? Then I would go and buy FMDQ contract to take my dollar out. If 1 year is over, I would then simply look at what's the exchange rate right now. If it's favorable to me, I ignore my FMDQ forward contract. I just take my dollar out. If the rate has gone to say 1,000, I lock in and I say I want to buy at this price. They give it to me and I get out. That's the way I would do it. Euro to dollar, dollar to Nigerian bank bond, via Nigerian registered financial institution. So you get a certificate of capital importation. You invest. When you sell, you take your dollars out again. So make sure you also ask about your tax liability as well. I'll be back to you.
Oh, Kalu, I hope she's still here and she has gotten her feedback. Okay, so the other question is about UBA. Why is the market price for UBA still down despite the PE? Okay, just a minute. So you said, why is the market price still down despite having a good PE?
There is no good or bad PE. It's the market price the market determines the price of the stock, right? So it's not automatic that if I have a low PE, I get a high price or demand. If the market believes that a particular stock is going to do well, they start to buy it. If they start to buy that stock, the earnings don't change immediately. So the stock now starts to have a high PE, meaning that it's expensive, right? Because people are buying the stock, so the stock price goes up in price. And because the stock price is going up in price, it will tilt that price to earnings ratio. So the price is going up, earnings are fixed. So it will become very high number. The revenues or the earnings for that stock now have to increase to then reduce the PE ratio. So what happens if the stock then turns out to be, it wasn't really a good thing? The price will fall back down and the PE will fall back down. But if tomorrow they announce that, wow, UBA has just bought that UBA has been selected by Warren Buffett as his next stock purchase. What do you think happened to the price of UBA? It will go up to 1,000 naira one share. What happens to the P ratio? It will shoot up like a rocket, right? That's good to go to the moon. So it's the market price that determines what happens. The PE is just, all these are signboards. Remember, earnings are in the future. The price is today, but you won't look at the forward earnings as well. The price is today, but the earnings you're using has already happened. It's not the earnings for today. So you see them saying sometimes trailing earnings or future earnings. You want to look at future earnings to determine that PE. All right, Obi.
Okay, thank you, Carlo. I think Swalland is trying to. He has been requesting for the mic, but to be added as a speaker. But I'm unable to add him here. I don't.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, Singh is here. So Singh is here. Yeah, go for it, Singh. Hey, what's up? How you doing?
Hold on. Yeah, well, I think there's okay. So I think she just brought me down to say that she was actually referring to the U.S. market. Sorry, that was it. So there's a lady who asked the question about investing in how it affects the U.S. market. She's of course looking at it in a high tax economy like Germany. So probably she's in Germany.
Yeah,
so not the Nigerian U.S. market.
Yeah,
Nigerian stock market. Sorry.
So
So I think it's the same.
yes, same thing. Be very, very clear when you are investing across market. They have different tax jurisdictions. If you invest, say, US to UK, there are very, very important tax questions there. So make sure you are very clear about investing across borders. That's just what I'll say, yeah.
Great. Okay. So Singh, you can unmute your mic and speak then.
Hello. I just want to say hello and
How you doing?
good. Just want to share my thoughts, like where the market's gonna go in the next like 2 to 3 months, and get maybe Carlo's thoughts on it. I see that U.S. our inflation is really high right now, 8.3%. So they really need to tackle the inflation by raising interest rates. So I think the next 2 meetings for the Fed in June and July, they're most likely going to raise the interest rates to tackle the high inflation. So what that's going to do is, all the risk on assets will drop and continue to be choppy for the next 2 to 3 months. And then in September, when they meet, they're going to actually start backing off and turn more dovish. And that's when you're going to see stocks and other assets start to rise in the US, is what I see for the next 2 or 3 months. And whenever you're in a bear market, it's actually a good time to accumulate good hard assets, because you're getting all those hard assets like commodities and energy stocks for cheap. So this is a good time to be accumulating for the next 2 to 3 months. Whatever sectors you like, you should be accumulating, I think, in the next 2 to 3 months. And then the cash, our cash is probably, it's done the best, but you are losing to the inflation. Your currency is getting weaker. I think our dollar is weakening probably 16% per year is what you're looking at, the real inflation rate.
Yeah, good points. I think. Let me just say this about the US markets, right? The US always says they are independent markets, investor protections. I'm very careful from now till November in the US markets. Right now, we're no longer in free market territory. Let me just lay a few pointers down, right? The Fed has said they're going to raise rates. The market has even priced in about 6 or 7 rate hikes, which means every meeting they might do 0.25 or even 0.75. We know they're going to raise rates. We just don't know at what speed or how steep that raise would be. So we know that already. This is where I have a cautioning. If you raise rates, Americans are going to lose jobs. Americans have an elections coming up in November. The Democrats control the presidency, the Senate, and the House. I am not sure the Democrats will sit back and allow job losses to occur, even though that is the prescription to fight inflation. They've tried everything. They've tried to release strategic oil reserves. It has not worked. They have tried to blame Putin. It has not worked. Right now, there's no baby formula in America. The stat says 1 in 5 states are out of baby formula in America. Economic confidence is down. Inflation is rising. The jobs report was very good. And this is the problem. If job reports are good, that means that interest rates must go up. That means the Fed is correct to raise rates. But the Fed there are 10 million job openings in America that are not taken. So there are more jobs in America than applicants. So when you look at all this, that tells you that the market is hot. But inflation is removing any real returns in America because it's too high. But inflation in America is driven by energy prices. So the Fed can't do anything about energy prices. You can't reduce interest rates and then oil will pump. So what I see happening is that the Democrats are going to fight the Fed and stop them from increasing interest rates because they cannot afford to lose employment during this run-up to the elections. You saw them invite Powell to the White House. This is the independent central bank governor of the US, was invited to the White House with the president. If Powell does try to do it, expect a very, very harsh summer. We see all these riots and people will say, oh, Powell is the devil and all that kind of stuff because they can't afford it. I'm being political here a bit. Because of these issues, it's difficult to gauge what's going to happen in the market. We can gauge using the data, but it's difficult to gauge what will really happen. Would the US still go ahead and raise rates and create unemployment that will then cause the Democrats to lose the election because they want to fix the US economy? I doubt it. I doubt it sincerely, but we'll see what will happen.
So I think you have it correct that the elections is a big thing this year. But right now, the most pressing issue in the US right now is the inflation. So it was 8.5 and then it went down to 8.3. So they're almost bound to raise the interest rates to get this inflation under check. So if we have like lower prints of inflation in like 1 or 2 months, that's when they will start backing off. And they have to back off because our debt to GDP is so high. So right now, I think we're at 0.75 interest.
Yeah.
So just to give an example, if the US raised the interest rate to 2% level, just the interest payment on that debt, which is at 30 trillion right now, would be $750 billion, which is equivalent to the US military budget throughout the world. Mm. So this is where you see that you cannot, the Fed is, they'll try to raise to get the inflation under check. I think the next 2 meetings in June and July. I think in September, they will start backing off. As we see, but they have to see the decreasing inflation trend. That way they can have, once they start backing off in September, and the stock market will rise and all these risk-on assets. And then, the Democrats can say, hey, look at this. The market's doing good. We have inflation under control. So they want both of them under check. And I think that's how I see it. So this next 2 to 3 months will actually give a lot of opportunities for everyone to buy hard assets. Whatever you're eyeing, you should be probably dollar cost averaging over the next 2 to 3 months and take advantage of all these sale prices that are coming up.
I think you have a good point there in terms of buying depreciated assets. Let me just make this very simple for everybody. In 2022, every sector is down. Every sector. If you look at the heat map, there are only 2 greens. Should we say 3 green sectors in the entire US market? The first green is the energy stocks, ExxonMobil, Occidental. That's the first green sector that is making money in 2022. The second green sector is, of course, agriculture. Why did they start making money? Because Russia has shut down the ports in Ukraine, so grain prices have gone up. So anything, commodities, grain, all that kind of stuff is going up in price. That's the sector that is going up. Second, that's what Singh is saying, hard assets. What's the third sector going up in price? Very cynical. Lockheed Martin. Do you know what Lockheed Martin is? That's a company making javelins, bombs that's going off in Ukraine right now. Apart from those three sectors, nothing in the year 2022 is positive. Which means if you want to buy Microsoft or Google and you're looking for a good price, this is the time to buy if you want to buy and you think the price is good. My problem is this, right? The only way inflation goes away is if there's an increase in the supply of crude oil. Because the inflation in America, Japan, Euros is caused by high energy and food prices, not by the printing. If they printed the money and there was no Ukraine war and the US was pumping crude oil, there will be no inflation per se. It will still be 2, 3 or so. The inflation today is because crude oil. That's why you see crude oil is making money. That's what's going on. That's why Biden is going to Saudi Arabia. That's why the US has lifted the sanctions on Venezuela. That's why the US wants to sign a deal with Iran. They want supply to come up, but they are fighting this monster called, and I mean monster, sorry, this gigantic oil supplier called Russia. As long as you take Russian supply off the market, then you've reduced supply and you guarantee prices will stay high. I'm not talking the geopolitics of it, I'm just giving you the economic side of it. Unless there is supply into the market, inflation is not going to go down, at least till November. And this is the thing, who knows what will happen from, say, July to November? No, the Americans have a saying, as gas prices go, elections goes. Right now, the average price in America, in California, is almost 9. Average in America is 4. This is per gallon, 4. Saying, what's up? Come back.
I'm just going to make one last comment. We're talking to you, and I think, just commodities, energy sector, these things will continue to do well because, the world runs on energy. So these are hard assets. And then I would say Bitcoin, I have to bring it up. Everyone should research why Bitcoin is unique in the crypto space. Now, I would not tell anyone to study any of the other crypto, just Bitcoin. It's a hard asset to hold. And then one funny quote I got to share, because I follow this one guy. He's Greg Floss. He's a Canadian. He says, the dollar is the best crack house on a crack street. So he's describing that the dollar is like, it's the strongest currency out there, but all these currencies are weakening over time because you see the global currency printing going on. So the dollar will be around, this is going to be the strongest currency going forward. Yeah. Because everyone runs on the dollar, but even the dollar is weakening over time. This is where you got to really diversify in the hard assets. And I think you were mentioning commodities and energy. Those are great. And then, some of the great big tech stocks in the US, Google's been beat down, Amazon's beat down, Tesla's been beat down. So this is the time to just research these big companies that have been beat down, but they are really strong and they're still going to produce. So take advantage, I would say, next 2 to 3 months, as it's a choppy market, just find the good hard assets and just layer into it over time.
Good point.
Thank you.
Toby, just a last comment before I hand it back to you. Just a last comment on this, right? So just about the US dollar. You see, the US printed as much as Zimbabwe printed. There's no difference between the US dollar and the Zimbabwean dollar. They both printed trillions. The difference is this. You don't buy Saudi oil with Zimbabwean dollars. If Zimbabwe got a deal with the Saudis to accept Zimbabwean dollars to buy Saudi oil, then the Zimbabwean currency today will be worth 1 trillion times what it is today. So it's not the printing, the US, what I'm trying to say, the US dollar, I don't want to use the word for it, right? But the Zimbabwean dollar and the US dollar are similar, no difference. In fact, Zimbabwe printed less than the US, but but you use the dollar to buy. Saying it's crazy. So when you say it that way, people you say, the Saudi petrodollar agreement is the epoch, is the I don't know what word to use now. Once that goes away, it's all over, guys, which is why it won't go away.
You hit the nail on the head there. Yeah, they're all fiat currencies, but the dollar has strength because of the petrodollar.
There you go.
Yeah, once that goes away, I think, and we see the confidence being lost with the seizure of the Russian FX reserves. 600 billion. We just said, hey,
Correct.
You can't touch your own money.
Yeah,
so
correct.
That creates shakiness, and that you said it really well.
Correct.
It was great chatting.
Thanks. Anytime. Thank you. Welcome anytime. Toby, sorry, we went off. But Sync does that. So,
this has really gone to a very high level discussion, but I did enjoy it. I hope some other people also enjoyed it. The one thing I pick out from here is this: if Russia succeeds in getting another country to reject the dollar currency, the dollar currency will just go down. That's one thing I pick out from here, and the US will not let that happen. So,
yes,
guys, let's get Kaliwa dropping something about that. But this is what I pick from all the discussion right now.
Yes.
If Russia succeeds, then the US dollar is good.
Yes, which is why they won't succeed, because the US is going to do everything to stop that from happening. It's not a Democrat or Republican issue anymore. It will become a U.S. national security issue. If you look at the news recently, what do you see the U.S. telling Ukraine? President Biden just told the Ukraine right now to consider giving territory to Russia to stop the war. Henry Kissinger has said the same thing. The New York Times, the Washington Post have both published stories saying that the U.S. should rein Ukraine and tell them they cannot win with unlimited U.S. power. This was happening. We don't hear this on the news, but Russia is winning in the East. I'm sorry, guys. The news says Russia is winning in the East, and Ukraine is being propped up by arms sales. So they have to get done with Ukraine so that they can then go back to OPEC, because it's OPEC plus. Russia is a part of OPEC, and Russia has very, very good relations with Saudi Arabia that is in OPEC. I mean, personal good relations between MBS and Putin. So whatever you do, Europe is not going to stop importing Russian gas, at least in the next 24 to 6 months. They won't stop. EU wants to ban crude oil. If you ban crude oil in the EU from Russia, it simply goes somewhere else because there's demand for it. So the only way you stop this is to go to Saudi Arabia, who are the only swing producers, because only they can increase the pumps and put out, say, 2 million barrels per day. The US just tried strategic oil reserves release. It didn't work. So if they go and they quote unquote play nice to Saudi Arabia and Venezuela and crude oil starts to pump, then the price of crude oil starts to go down. That's how you hurt Putin. Putin is not being hurt by javelins. No, he's still winning the war. The Russian ruble is now at the same strength as it was before the Russian war started. Their revenues, they are making 20 billion, is it a day or a month? That's Russia is. They've lost nothing, because when you restrict the price of exports of crude oil, the price goes up and Russia makes more money. So the way to get to Russia is to increase supply, to force the price down. Then you can sanction. It's like how Nigeria shut down her borders when she didn't make rice locally. We simply increase the price of rice locally because there's no supply. You don't shut down a border. You don't sanction if there's no supply. Doing that simply favors the guy that has the commodities. The Russian ruble now is tied to gold. So it's now the best performing currency in the entire world. Who would have thought? These are guys under sanctions. So it's too many things are in the air. Russia, Ukraine, elections, too many things are in the air. Don't take any risk. If you want to invest, don't borrow to invest. That's what I'll say. Go ahead and do your investing, but don't borrow. Keep your leverage low. Allow yourself significant margin of error, because if you make an error, keep yourself that margin to get out of it. And let's hope for the best. Guys, to just make a point, I think on Android, yeah, on Android, I don't see this time. I'm going to go to buy an iPhone. Next meeting, I'll be on an iPhone so I can see all these requests. I see the requests, but I can't add the people. It's a conspiracy by Twitter against Android users. So I do apologize. So I have to go buy an iPhone. Toby, you got the floor.
Deep stuff, Carlo. I mean, yeah, I'm going to jump in.
No. I was laughing at what because I also use an Android, Carlo.
That's why we can't add people. Once it gets to, I think, 50 or so, I can see the request. I see requests to speak, but I can't add them. So every week that happens. So my friend told me, no, it's an Android thing. Go get an iPhone. So I'm going to go get an iPhone just for Twitter Spaces. Yeah, it's yeah. Maybe I tell you what, I'm going to buy Twitter and fix this. That's what I'm going to do. Yeah.
We'll talk to Elon, man. We'll talk to Elon. All right, guys, this is 2 hours. I mean, Carlo, I don't know how you feel on the seat right now, but I'm sure you're really cruising. And thank you so much for being so gracious to your time and your knowledge, part on the book, but then unpacking them in a very nice and easy to understand manner. Guys, if you've not gotten the book, what are you waiting for? There's a lot more in the book, and I thought we'll, unpack all this in 2 parts. But it seems we're going to have Carlo back for a 3rd and probably final part. Carlo, when do you think that will be, so that we can start organizing ourselves? So I guess by then everyone here would have, gotten the book, gone through the book at least once, and come back for the final part. When do you think that would be, Carl? Because there should be a part 3 to this.
I hear you. I mean, let's look at late June, early July, and let's see what's going to happen, right? We got some guys want to bring in some guys from the pension side. We're trying to bring in. I have an app that is doing something very, very interesting in the collective scheme sector. I have some guys that are building like a digital Azure. I want to bring them in because I think Nigerians are doing that as well. I mean, what they've done is they've taken our traditional savings and they've made it, should we say, they've digitized it, made it easier to use, made it very, very simple to use. It makes a lot of sense. I've seen what they're building. I like it. I want to invite them to the spaces to then talk. They're in the UK, so I think lots of UK folks, and they are BIPOC and all that. They're minority and all that. So I really like that story. Then we have, I think, one more space. So I would say July-ish, but we'll talk, Toby. We'll talk.
Great, Carlo. Thank you so much, for making this happen and for being gracious with your knowledge. Guys, I don't know about you, but I had like 5 to 10 pages, taking notes. I can't count them right now. I hope you did as well. If you didn't, I mean, I trust that you'll find a way to listen to the replay just to get clarity on the knowledge Carlos unpacked here. While we try to, gradually wind down, I don't know if there's any question from your end. I know I'm done with asking the question. We can just gradually, wind down. If we can get anyone to speak, I also use an Android. Probably we'll get, 3 Androids, three iPhones here, so that this can get more smoothly in the subsequent Twitter space. But I don't know if you can add anybody or you have any question from your end, so that we can let Carlo go and enjoy the rest of his weekend at this end. Any question from your end, Bianaju?
None here today. Okay, so none in my DM. No request to speak. Well, I don't see any, though. I don't see any request to speak. And no question in my DM.
All right, guys. Thank you very much, for sticking with us for the last 2 hours. Special thanks to Carlo for writing this book and also explaining the thinking and, breaking it down to piecemeal that we can easily understand and apply. Carlo, special thanks to you.
Thanks, Toby.
It's all for me. My name is Toby.
All right, Toby. Thanks, Toby. Thanks, Obi. Thanks for everyone listening and joining in. We'll see you guys next Saturday. We try to do this every Saturday by 8 p.m. We might change the time to make it 8 a.m., but we'll let you guys know before then. All right, guys, stay safe. Keep it simple. Be nice to each other. And bye. Shutting down in 5, 4, 3.